What is up, guys? Before we get started, I want to tell you about our friends over at Zoom Care. I used this service recently, and man, what a time saver it is! What a convenient service it is. Instead of having to go into a doctor's office where you got to schedule, you got to make sure you leave work, you have time, you got to get in there, sign up, sit around, all that stuff. It ends up being, I mean, at best case scenario, probably an hour and a half of your day going away as you need to, get into a doctor's office, get checked up. Whereas with Zoom Care, you schedule your appointment, you schedule your time, you hop in on the Zoom 5 minutes, maybe even less, before your appointment starts. The doctor's there on time. You tell them what's going on. They tell you what they think you need to do. They get you a prescription sent or whatever you need. And minutes later, you have taken care of this. It took me exactly 13 minutes, my first meeting with Zoom Care, which I say is 10 times less than it would if I had to go to an actual doctor's office. So make sure you check out Zoom Care, ZOOMCARE.com to schedule your appointment today and hopefully never go into a doctor's office again.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. Two goes out to Zach, Mace, RK at the bar. Three for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Not supposed to wait for, well, bring on the chase. Out on the field at Mile High, Broncos win is our desire. Coupled with Breck, Brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
All right, we are presented by MSU Denver Online. Make sure you check them out. msudenver.edu/online is where you can scope out all they have to offer. We're talking 750 total classes, 45 plus online hybrid programs, and so much for you to further that education. So check it out. MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as students attending any other Colorado institution. So this is the best place for you to go if you're looking to keep that job and further that education to hopefully then get a better job. So make sure you check them out. msudenver.edu/online.
My boys, what's shaking? So pumped to be starting the week with you fellas.
It's going to be a great one. I can feel it, except for the weather, which is supposed to get worse.
Yeah, it is. We got summer last week, and now we're going back into springtime.
Or winter. I mean, this is Colorado, right? When
Yeah.
Denver, Colorado, home of the Mother's Day snowstorm that many years ago forced Mike Shanahan, to alter the entire offseason schedule because it kept snowing so late into the spring that he got sick of moving minicamp inside the old bubble that was down at Dove Valley. And for a few years, guys, minicamp was in July because Mike got so sick of moving minicamp inside. Of course, now with the field house, if that were the case, it wouldn't be an issue anymore.
NFLPA would have none of that mini camp in July. I can guarantee that. And good thing they're not in the
I feel like you can draw a pretty direct line between people who get very intense fake tans and people who really hate the snow.
People who don't want to go inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's basically a catcher's mitt at this point.
Wait, you're telling me that's fake?
It's very real, and he's put in countless hours in Cabo cultivating that glow over the years. I mean, it's funny. Like whenever there was a bye week, you always knew that at the earliest possible moment he was going to be on that private jet, wheels up to Cabo for as long as possible. That's if you want to find Mike Shanahan, you can usually find him either in Cabo or out in Santa Clara with his son.
How did he never coach the San Diego Chargers? How did they just not dangle, a beach in front of him and lure him away from the Broncos?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Would have been funny if that's how the Broncos lost Mike Shanahan, like in the middle of the wonder years. They're just like, he's like, look, man, I just really can't handle this snow. It's sunny and 75 every single day in San Diego.
And he ended up in Washington, which is just okay. Although in the course of his time away from the NFL, he did flatly turn down Buffalo's interest at one point. I mean,
Not a surprise.
Yeah. In retrospect, though, that might have been a mistake going to Washington. That's another discussion entirely.
Welcome into the DNVR Mike Shanahan podcast.
Hey, at least he's a Ring of Famer, right?
Did the Cabo Sun also make his teeth miraculously that white?
Oh, the money he was getting paid, he could have the pearliest of whites, guys.
That's true. Okay, we will transition into much more topical segments here. Over the weekend, it comes out from a quote from Dalton Reisner, who was on the Matt Lombardo podcast, the Matt Lombardo show on the Fansided Network, and really interesting quote from Dalton Reisner. I actually have it word for word here right in front of me. I know, me prepared, who could believe it. It says here, Peyton Manning is a big fan of Drew Lock. Him and Drew have been doing a lot of work this offseason watching film. If he's on board with Drew, I've been on board with Drew. It's been fun. I always love how people don't know how to finish quotes, so they just throw in something at the end like, it's been fun. Anyways.
It has. I'm like, I read that. I'm like, 5-11.
I just think he means this offseason. It's been fun.
Yeah.
It's been a fun offseason. The offseason
just
has always
watching
been more fun recently.
Yeah.
Watching Drew work with Peyton Manning has been very fun.
Very fun. But, this is something that has been a big topic in Broncos country over the weekend. Some people like finding a way to twist this into criticism of Drew Lock, but most people, using this as a reason for hope for Drew Lock, and I think it is. Now you always know like how you have to be careful how much you care about this stuff, how much you read into this stuff. What I will say though is that if Peyton Manning, who, as we know, is one of the busiest people around for a retired man. He's got something on the schedule every day. He has the next 365 days of his life planned out, I assume. If he's taking time out of his schedule to work with Drew Lock, and not just like a one time, you remember when we were talking about like the 2-hour phone call they had or something, like if he's taking time out of his schedule to work with Drew Lock on a consistent basis, more than once, really, I'll say, it tells me that Peyton Manning doesn't think Drew Lock is a lost cause. And that has to be worth something.
Well, Ryan, do you think if Paxton would have reached out to Peyton? I don't think Peyton's reaching out to Drew. I think I give credit to Drew for reaching out to Peyton. Do you think Peyton would have, turned Paxton away? I think Peyton is connected with the Broncos. So I think that Peyton would do this for anyone. But like I said, it wouldn't be Peyton reaching out to Paxton or Peyton reaching out to Drew or Peyton reaching out to Trevor. It's Drew reaching out to Peyton. And right there, I love that. I absolutely love that because he has that resource available to him and he's using it. And guys, it's the best resource that you can have right now in this weird offseason as well. And one thing that we know and that has really solidified this offseason is Drew's work ethic. We know that is not a question mark at all. And you have to have that. You have to be a tireless work ethic type of person in order to succeed in the NFL at the quarterback position. So that's one of the biggest things that we've really got to cement this offseason is Drew's work ethic is absolutely there, which is huge.
Yeah, the work ethic's never been the question, and that's the thing. It doesn't surprise me that he's reaching out to Peyton Manning. Number one, of course, Drew and Peyton go back to Drew being at the Manning Passing Academy several years ago. So that's where the connection really began. It's a good job that Drew sought him out, and certainly Peyton wanting the best for the Broncos in general. I think. Shoot, he would have taken Paxton Lynch's call if Paxton had called him 4 or 5 years ago. And I think he'll take Peyton. He took Drew Lock's call. The thing is, the issue for Drew has never been putting in the work. It's never been the time that he puts in. It has been being able to take what he has learned and make sure that he's following it when he's at full speed. I mean, he is teachable. And that's something that you heard about at Mizzou. You've heard about here. He's teachable. That he'll listen. He's involved in the classroom. He's not somebody who's sitting there goofing off. He puts in the time, but it's sometimes we all tend to revert to kind of what our human nature is when we're under duress, and it's going to be almost retraining his mind, retraining his instincts to where, even though he knows what to do, he actually does it. And so I think it's great that he's doing it. I just don't know if this changes anything, at least for me.
So I want to circle back to the Paxton Lynch comments. I think that it had Paxton Lynch, and I'm thinking once it was known that Paxton Lynch was a lost cause. I think that if Paxton Lynch had reached out, going into, what was it, year 3? Was that the year that he was cut?
Yep.
Yes.
And would have said to Peyton, hey, do you have some time this offseason to work with me on my film study habits and all this? I think Peyton would have said, hey, thanks for reaching out, Paxton. I'd love to hop on a call with you. Let's chat later this week. And I think he would have given him the bare minimum to, not seem like a douche, for lack of a better term. But Peyton, hasn't, while Peyton is a good dude, no one has ever hailed him as this saint. They're he kind of has that John Elway, the thing that the greats have, which is he has a little bit of a-hole in him. And so I just don't think he's just handing out his time for anyone who calls him. I think that he legitimately believes that there's still hope for Drew Lock to become a very good NFL quarterback, or I don't think he would be wasting his time with him.
Okay, and I disagree. I think Peyton would help any Bronco quarterback, especially a high-profile one like a first-round pick or like Drew Lock right now. But guys, don't we all think that there's still hope for Drew? And that's what the Broncos really seem to be leaning in on right now, because we know that the physical talent is there. And what does he need? Well, he just needs the mental side of the game. He needs to be able to go through his progressions quicker. He needs to be able to read defenses from at the line of scrimmage and once the play's developing. Well, who's the best in the world at that? It's Peyton Manning. And so I totally agree with what Mace said about, okay, can he take this stuff that he's learning from Peyton now in slow meetings where they're going, halftime speed through this film, and can he take that and maybe watch enough or understand what Peyton Manning sees at the line as the play starts developing, and then can it click when it's 10 times faster in first person on the field? Guys, if he gets that, the Broncos we shouldn't be talking about first round quarterback at all this year. We won't be talking about it next year either. Then he's going to be great because he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the arm talent, he's got the swag, he's got the leadership, he's got the work ethic, guys. He has everything. It's this. And so what I do love is there's no better person to go to for Drew than Peyton Manning when it comes to Drew's biggest weakness right now. And I mean, if he can just be half of Peyton this year, then he's going to be that guy, at least for this year. And he's going to be able to build on that for the future.
The thing is, I mean, with Peyton, he is of elite football mind. I mean, he's got a special kind of brain that he possesses. And you look over the years at when Peyton has had understudies under him, going back to Indianapolis, and even he had Brock Osweiler in the same room with him for 4 years. And, there he is working every day in the same room with Osweiler, and Osweiler's kind of there to ask him questions, to pepper him to learn. And it didn't all get there. And that's the kind of the one thing that I have. It's sort of, you see it sometimes with some great players in any sport who become coaches. They can't quite, make it translate. I mean, I remember Magic Johnson trying to coach the Lakers, nearly 3 decades ago. And he was only a few years retired and not being able to kind of get everything across because he just saw the game and felt it so differently than anybody else. So I mean, I'm a little bit skeptical about just how much Drew is going to be able to take from Peyton, because Peyton's kind of on another level from pretty much any quarterback I've ever seen when it comes to the mental side of it.
I just realized that my dream content that I could create would be either playing Madden with Peyton Manning, or I'm playing Madden and Peyton Manning is helping me. I want to come up to the line, and he's like, "Oh, okay, that's cover 2. So make sure you hot route the outside receiver to fade." Like, that would be so incredible just to have Peyton Manning help me just school someone in Madden.
Yeah, it'd be better to have Peyton on your side than Peyton going up against you, or he would diagnose exactly what it is.
But I would love that too. Like we're playing against each other, but he has to tell me, like he gets to the line, he's like, "Oh, okay, so I see what you're doing here. This is cover. I see you're in cover 4, and so I'm just gonna take the I want it. So Patrick Smythe sometimes tunes into our show. If you're watching, please help me make that happen.
Maybe we can do it live on here. That would be some quality content. Or we just have Peyton go up against Drew and we stream it.
That would probably end poorly.
You think Peyton never plays Madden?
How about this?
I don't think Peyton has the stick skills.
How about this? How about
agree.
Peyton against Paxton? That would be something. We know Paxton's pretty good at the video games.
Yeah, he's more of a Fortnite guy, though. I mean, that requires a different skill set than playing Madden. So I'm
sure he gets his
don't know about that.
Okay. Last thing I want to talk about on this subject. I always like getting a hard, concrete answer on something. So, scale of 1 to 10. 10 being because of this. Drew Lock is going to be great this year. 1 being I could not care less about this. Where do you guys fall on the scale?
I'm at a 3, and the reason that it's a 3 instead of just a 1 is that I really like that Drew's doing this, and I really like that he's putting the extra work in, because it's something to be put, on your iPad in the building this whole time. That's awesome. But then to be going the extra step of reaching out to Peyton is huge. So I'll go 3 for that reason.
You took my grade, Zach, so I'm just gonna knock it down to, and since I'm the negative guy in the room, and I'm gonna say 2. I'm gonna say 2.5. I mean, again, I'm encouraged that he's doing this, that he's taking the time to reach out. It doesn't surprise me that he would work. It's funny how some people, that believe that Drew is another Paxton Lynch. He's not. Putting the work in has never been the issue for Drew Lock. I mean, he has put in the time. I mean, remember how he threw himself enthusiastically into the VR stuff back in 2019 when he was recovering from the injury to give him a shot at getting a leg up and getting some decent work in while he was recovering from that. So Drew's always been willing to put in the extra time that it's going to take. It's just it doesn't change anything for me in terms of kind of where I think the Broncos should go in the next couple of weeks at the quarterback position. But it's a positive. And look, if the Broncos do draft a quarterback in round 1, I actually like the idea of having that quarterback in it with Drew Lock and having them compete. And if Drew is the guy and responds beautifully to the pressure, you trade the surplus and you move on.
All right. We've got a 2 and a 3.
2.5.
2.5. Stack them together?
No, I'm not going to. Also, shout out to our friend Ben Albright in the comment section. He said he would love Peyton as my OC. But anyways.
Well, wait, really quick, since you brought it up, and thanks for tuning in, Ben, Ryan. You know how a lot of people, especially maybe 2 or 3 years ago, were saying, do you think you can get Peyton as your quarterback coach?
Oh,
well, and we thought that was the lowest you could go. I think we just figured out maybe the lowest you can go. You get Peyton as your offensive coordinator in Madden. I think there we go.
He can be my defensive coordinator too, for what it's worth. Although,
I'll go a step further. He can be my GM.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know.
No, that's not as far as you can go, Zach. He can be my managing partner. He can own the damn team.
You know what? Yeah, he doesn't even have to be a partner for me. He can just be my Madden team, and I'll happily watch him. There you go, Peyton. We're trying to sell you here.
I guess I don't need him though, because I am undefeated right now. Anyway,
wow! You just want to whip out the muscles right there, show the flex.
Slight flex. I'm gonna go with a 4, just because I'm with you, Zach. Basically, everything you said in terms of liking the the fact that he's making this effort, reaching out, doing all the right things. And I'm adding one more little tick to the score there because I think it can legitimately help him. I think it really can in terms of, his on-field abilities. Okay, quick transition. Mace, you had a friend of this program on your program, James Palmer, on your radio show, and he had a very interesting comment about the Broncos and the quarterback situation and the draft, and I wanted to discuss that here, and I think we actually have a little piece of the clip here, so let's play that.
And what I've been told is, I haven't been told that they love anybody just yet. Because if they did, I think they would have already made the attempt to move up. But I do think there might be somebody they like enough, and I do know there's someone, and I don't know who exactly that is, but I was told not everybody who's available to us is a fit, which means, and it's funny because everybody thinks about it this way. Well, you're at the top of the draft, you need a quarterback, and there's 5 of them. Well, it doesn't mean you like all 5. I mean, it doesn't mean they all 5 fit you, and I think that's where people get lost in this. To where, only one of the 5 might fit what you want to do. And I think if the Broncos go out and don't land a quarterback in this draft, I think that's when people do have to realize, well, maybe who they really, really liked is out. And you don't just settle with a pick that high for somebody that you don't think is a fit.
Okay. So there's
a lot to unpack there.
Yes, there is a lot to unpack there. I want to start here because this is my main overarching take. If the Broncos are looking at this right now and they believe that the 2 quarterbacks that will be available are Trey Lance and Justin Fields, and they, with 2 weeks to go until the draft, and they aren't in love with either of them, it's over. There's no time to fall in. You can't. What are you going to fall in love with between now and then that you haven't fallen in love with now? With that being said, I don't think it's just that simple. I don't think it's that simple as them looking and saying, well, it's Lance or Fields, we don't love them, so why would we trade up? I think it's we can't be 100% sure of what's going to happen in picks 1, 2, and 3, so we can't be 100% sure enough to trade up to number 4. So I think if you're the Broncos, unless you get a call from Atlanta where they say, hey, look, I know you guys wanted to wait, but Team X is ready to move up right now because they don't care if it's Lance, Fields, or Mac Jones. They want one of them. Well, then you have to start having the internal discussion of, are we going to do this right now or not? I think the ideal scenario for the Broncos is they say, okay, well, after the 3rd pick goes off the board, we're happy to make this move up if our guy, who is, let's say, Justin Fields, is there. So that's the only thing that gives me hesitation from just being like, if they're not in love, call it off. They're not drafting a quarterback in the 1st round. I don't think it's that simple. I think they need to see what happens first before they can just go gung-ho, trade what it would really take to move up from 9 to 4.
Ryan, you're 100% right about this. Now, the San Francisco 49ers were in a great spot because you know who's going 1. You have a really good idea who's going 2. And so for the 49ers to trade up to 3, they said, we love Zach Wilson. Just in case, Justin Fields goes off the board, we love Justin Fields or they love Mac Jones or they love Trey Lance. They love one of those 3 guys. We know that. And then they also have to love Zach Wilson just in case the Jets were to go crazy and have kept Sam Darnold and gone a different direction, traded that pick, or gone with someone else. But guys, how often do you enter a draft and it being a team and you're in love with 4 different quarterbacks? I find that really hard to believe that a team would be in love with 4 quarterbacks. So I completely agree with James Palmer. When I say I would take any of the top 5 quarterbacks, I know that's not how an NFL team is. That's how I am, and I would do that, but I know most NFL teams aren't going to be in love with 5 guys. So, Ryan, the Broncos are at the point right now, they can't trade up to number 1. They can't trade up to number 2. They can't trade up to number 3. So, number 4, I really think that's going to, we're at the point where it's going to have to be a draft day trade for that to happen, probably for any team right now, unless New England just gets absolutely crazy and says, we're just desperate for anyone. We need a warm body in here to be with Cam Newton. So I think we are at the point where you passed up on your opportunity to get to 3. And maybe the 49ers or the who traded with them at 3? That maybe the Dolphins only wanted to work with the 49ers. So the Broncos never really had a shot. And from what I've heard, guys, there's one guy that the Broncos are teetering on the edge of loving, and they really, really like him. And so that's in play. I mean, if that guy's there at 4, you make that move 100%. But you can't make that move now because why in the world is Kyle Shanahan doing what he's doing and messing with us all? But he's doing it, and that's throwing the Broncos for a curve.
Give us the name, Zach. Give us the name. Okay, don't give us the name.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you're trying to kind of put all the pieces together. And, basically, once you get beyond the top 2, and you basically say Trevor and Zach Wilson, they're off the board. That of the 2 that are left, the 3 that are left, 2 they at least really like, and then 1 is just kind of off the board. And that's where the 49ers are interesting because by picking one of a certain quarterback, they may do the Broncos a favor. And another favor that may come in is we see the Dallas Cowboys saying, okay, there are rumblings that Jerry Jones has a man crush on Kyle Pitts and wants to go up to number 4 and might be willing to give up an awful lot to do that. So what if all of a sudden maybe you could get a quarterback that you at least really like, and you could do so at 5 or 6? 5 is of course the Cincinnati Bengals. The interesting thing about them in talking about a trade, what do the Bengals need? They need pass catchers and they need offensive linemen. They could easily go from 5 to 9 and still get Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater at tackle in all likelihood. And the Broncos could put together an interesting deal with the Bengals because they could, maybe in lieu of a draft pick to move as part of a package to move up, could offer one of the surplus wide receivers that they have. And so that might be a deal that could provide some mutual benefit. And then I saw a mock draft today. I think it was on the Draft Network that had the Broncos going up to 6 with Miami. Miami just, they're going,
Wow.
Up and down the dial. Basically, they went down, then they went back up. And, Brian Flores and company are always interested in dealing. But obviously you start getting to pick 5 and 6 instead of 4. Maybe then you're able to do it without having to give up a first round pick next year. And that's something that's in the equation as well, quite frankly, guys. It's not just about how much you like it. Is it worth us giving up a certain amount of draft capital? I think the Broncos be very interested. George Payton be very interested in moving up if he could do some kind of deal that did not involve the first rounder in 22.
Yeah, and I hate that because I hate if you love a guy or, you really, really like a guy that you're going to gamble with that. I don't like it. But Mace, obviously, that's the dream scenario. The dream scenario is to have your guy. And Ryan, I'll answer your question. The reason I hesitate was I haven't heard that sentence that I said with followed by this name, but everything else that I've heard behind the scenes points to this. Justin Fields is the guy. And so that's why. Does Kyle Shanahan love Justin Fields? I mean, he's going to be he was at his second pro day, going to be at his second pro day. Has that happened yet? And like I said, Kyle Shanahan's messing with everyone right now. So if he's still on the board at 4, which is very much a possibility, guys, that is something where I'm going, from everything I've heard, I'm going, holy cow, this is an opportunity for the Broncos to trade up to 4. But you're right, Mace. It's going to cost at least a first round pick. And would the Dolphins move back with you at 6 and you don't have to give a first? Ideal scenario. Now, the dream scenario is you just sit at 9 and cross your fingers that Justin Fields falls to you, like we've seen in a few mock drafts these past couple weeks.
If you are sitting there crossing your fingers, you don't love him enough.
I agree.
It's just like what we were going back and saying about Justin Simmons, in the previous off seasons. It's like, if you loved him, you'd sign him up. And, they went back and forth. And even the fact that they waited that long, I mean, and maybe George Payton loves him. He's the only one in the building who can, in the front office who can claim he loves him, because he took care of him when the first opportunity he had the chance to. But I don't even like what you said earlier about like teetering. Like he's not playing any more games. All that's between us and Justin Fields being drafted is time. Nothing will change between now and then. And that's what I don't like is the only thing that can change is you convincing yourself one way or the other. And no matter who you are, what you're doing, what decision you have to make, you can talk yourself into anything, right? You can sit there and watch Drew Lock tape, Justin Fields tape, Drew Lock tape, Justin Fields tape over and over and over again. And eventually whatever, you want to see, you'll see it. And so I don't like the idea that it's taking this long. I do believe that you have to see what happens in the top 3 before you trade up to 4. But I just want the Broncos, and maybe they're playing coy right now and saying, "Oh, we're not quite in love with anyone," because they don't want, people to know that they are just waiting to see what happens at 3 to trade up. That way, someone else who maybe wants Justin Fields would jump them. There's all sorts of games that you can play now, but it's as weird as it is to say, I don't want them to draft a quarterback at 9 because that tells me they didn't love him enough to move up, or it tells me they had incredible intel on what was going to happen in the draft. And, George Payton is a wizard. But I want you to look at a guy and say, I do not care what we have to give up. I need this guy in our facility as soon as I can possibly get him here because he is the quarterback of the future.
Maybe the decision isn't about loving the quarterback. Maybe it is you're George Payton. You just took this job, and how much draft capital do you want to sacrifice when kind of where you just came from Minnesota and your instinct is more to trade down and accumulate extra capital. And maybe you're thinking in terms of next year as well, saying, hey, if we trade down, even if we have a good season, maybe we can do what Buffalo did back in 2018 when they came off a 9-7 season and had that extra first round pick, and they were able to move up and take a pick from 21 and make it pick 7 as a result of trades and get Josh Allen. So I think it's a matter of kind of you're looking at all the potential possibilities here, and maybe trading up and sacrificing capital sort of goes against George Payton's instinct just a little bit, but you're sort of saying, okay, you're weighing the pros and cons. Maybe you got that whiteboard and you got the positives, you got the negatives, and then maybe it's as simple as going down the hall and talking with Pat Shurmur and Mike Shula once again, and saying, hey, what do you really think of this? And what do you think this offense would be if it's quarterback X, quarterback Y, or quarterback Z that you end up drafting? And then Peyton can go back and think about that. George Payton's also probably thinking about the fact that even in the top 12 picks, you've got only about a 50% chance of finding the long-term quarterback, the guy who's going to get that second deal. Of course, it's a lot better than your chances in the back half of the first round or into the second and third round. But still, you're like, okay, do I want to sacrifice that for 1 and 2, or do I think I'd rather wait and see if a guy falls to 9 and then pick him, and then I'm not sacrificing the future first round pick, and then I haven't given up too much if this guy isn't the guy. But that said, what I mentioned earlier is why Cincinnati, I think at 5 is the team to watch, guys, for the Broncos if they do move up. And San Francisco picking a certain quarterback may do the Broncos a favor and allow them to move up to Cincinnati, because I think the Bengals will take that call, and I think the Broncos could put together a deal with the Bengals that doesn't completely shred them in terms of capital.
Well, Mace, you make a great point about George Payton probably wanting to sit back this year and not make any huge moves, especially going against his DNA in terms of giving up draft capital instead of bringing draft capital in. But there are some times when you have to do the thing that you're not used to doing. Mm-hmm. And if you think that Justin Fields, and let's say he's there at 4 or 5, and that's the guy that you really, really like, or maybe you fall in love with by then, if you think he's the guy, well, don't be afraid to make that just because it's your first year here. Don't expect this type of caliber of quarterback to just be there every single year for you, especially if you said, Mace, the Broncos, let's say they, are at 15 next year, and we all think that they may be at 18 or 20 in terms of where they're picking next year. How difficult is it for New England to jump to 4 right now from being at 15? I think it's near impossible for them to do it, especially if the Broncos have any interest. So George also has to take that into consideration. And so I really hope that, I know this isn't in his DNA, but I hope that he doesn't just say, okay, well, we can't do it because it's my first year here and, it goes against who I am. I really hope that's not the case. I hope it's they trade up because they love a guy, or they say, we don't love any of these quarterbacks, so we're going to trade back, get capital, go with Drew, hope that him working with Peyton helps him, see him take that next step this year. And if not, well, then we got some more capital this year to move up, and we hope there's a guy there next year.
Yeah, I'm completely on board with that. And then I'm also on board with hanging on to Drew Lock. And then if that young guy isn't ready, think back to the Chargers, 2004. They had Drew Brees, and Brees's development had stalled and was kind of shaky, sort of like Drew Lock right now. And they draft Phillip Rivers. Brees, with that push from Rivers, starts becoming Drew Brees that year. And the Chargers go 12-4 and win the AFC West. So, I think that'd be pretty cool. And from a storyline perspective, guys, yeah, I don't think many people care about this, but we do for our work. How much fun would a Justin Fields, Drew Lock
give it to me
camp be? I mean,
yeah,
that'd be a blast to watch.
I would be living in a world that Justin Fields is being graded on a very sharp curve compared to Drew Lock as the number 4 or 5 overall pick. But it would be fun. I mean, it would definitely be fun, and there, except for like the stark divide in the fan base of toxicity that would probably come from that. But it's already toxic. So, what can you do? I think great points all around. And what I'll say is, in the words of Pleasure Horse, number 4, we're still waiting for.
Very beautifully said, Ryan.
So I think that's going to wrap up the live side of things. If you enjoyed this, hit it with a like. You can, of course, always subscribe to our channel here, and you can sign up for alerts every single time we go live. But for now, on the live side, that wraps it up. If you want to stay with us as we continue the conversation, you can download the DNVR Broncos podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Just type in Broncos. We're the first one that comes up. And you can hear the rest of the conversation with all of our members in the comments. So we'll catch you guys over there.